It is 49ers Intel here from Orlando. The owners' meetings. The NFL party was tonight. Good event as always. The NFC coaches have to be up early tomorrow morning. That means I have to be up early tomorrow morning as well. We're talking 7:45 a.m. Eastern time for the start of breakfast with Kyle Shanahan. That means that I have to be up earlier than that here in Orlando. But it's always a great event. I think this is the best off-season NFL event of the year. So I've got plenty of 49ers intel for you. There you can see John Lynch, who spoke to us today. It was a 30-minute session. We got a lot of good 49ers information out of it. So go ahead and check the article out in the description of this article. Of this video. Check out the article in the description of this video. It is up on The Athletic. You can go ahead and see John Lynch and his many thoughts about the 49ers and strategy. And obviously, it might have drawn a reaction out of Brandon Aiyuk today. We saw the Instagram post with the emojis from Brandon Aiyuk. The fact of the matter is, and this is something that I'm going to repeat over and over and over again, Brandon Aiyuk is under contract with the 49ers through this 2024 season. It is not his decision to walk to another team. I mean, he can hold out this year, but then he doesn't get paid the $14.1 million that he's owed. We've seen contentious contract situations in the past. In fact, we've seen them in each of the past 2 seasons. One can even argue that we might have seen them in each of the past 4 seasons. It's become an annual tradition for the 49ers to try to pay A-listers and an annual tradition for them to succeed in doing so. 2020, they paid George Kittle. 2021, they paid Fred Warner. 2022, the 49ers paid Deebo Samuel. 2023, they paid Nick Bosa. I'm going to use the past 2 years as examples. In each of the past 2 years, the San Francisco 49ers did not reach agreements with Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa, respectively, until August and September, respectively. Nick Bosa wasn't until September. It wasn't until after Labor Day weekend last year. Now, it was drama-free. There was no talk through the media. There was no talk on social media. Deebo Samuel's situation was obviously different, as there was a trade request put in there by Deebo Samuel. Brandon Aiyuk right now, there hasn't been a trade request. John Lynch today said that the two sides have been in contact. I asked John Lynch, and you could find the video. It's up on the YouTube, the full 30 minutes. I specifically asked him a follow-up question. I asked, are you negotiating right now with Brandon Aiyuk, or are you just talking to his side? And John Lynch clarified, saying, just talking at this point. The negotiations haven't even truly begun. Parameters are being discussed right now. But anytime that you see a big takeaway from what's going on right now, keep in mind the negotiations haven't even started. And that it was 5 months from this point when both Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa signed their deals with the 49ers. So negotiations are going to be long. There's going to be back and forth. The 49ers cap situation is only more crowded than it was when they signed Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa. They've got the whole Brock Purdy situation in 2025 to take into account. But John Lynch's words have typically rung true in situations like this. There have been a lot of hysterics on the sidelines, but on the actual field of play, John Lynch has been a calmer voice, and whatever he said, whether it has been, we're going to pay Nick Bosa, we're going to figure this out, or we want to keep Deebo Samuel around, those kind of things have actually ended up true. So in this case, I think the 49ers' main priority is to find a way to pay Brandon Aiyuk. Now, how much money is that going to end up being? It's really, really difficult to illustrate the receiver market because Tyreek Hill is at the top of it at $30 million per year. But there's a lot of funny money in Tyreek Hill's contract. So you can see here, go ahead and hop into the description to check out this article about Lynch and what he talked about today. But I want to show you the top receiver contract in football, and it's Tyreek Hill's contract, and explain by looking at the contract why it is a tough comparison for any potential deal. And we know that Brandon Aiyuk is really good. So here's a look at Tyreek Hill's contract. He wanted to be at $30 million per year. He got the $30 million per year, but not all contracts are created equal. As you can see, the very last season of Tyreek Hill's contract, the base salary skyrockets from $21.8 million to $43.9 million. That is not guaranteed money. Only the roster bonus, which is $1 million, becomes due on March 19th of that season. So none of this right here, none of the $43.9 million in 2026 of base salary is guaranteed, which means that it's artificially inflating the annual average of Tyreek Hill's contract. They selected $43.9 million for a very specific reason, because it allowed the entire contract to add up to $120 million. And because it added up to $120 million over 4 years, it made it worth $30 million per year. Tyreek Hill became the first $30 million per year receiver in NFL history. If we look at all receivers, I can open up the list right now. We can see where Brandon Aiyuk might be able to legitimately slot in. Here is the receiver table on Over the Cap. We'll sort by average per year. As you can see, Tyreek Hill, through the funny money at the end of the deal, reached $30 million. But for all intents and purposes, it wasn't a $30 million per year contract. Devontae Adams is at 28. Cooper Kupp is at 26.7. A.J. Brown is at 25 million. Deebo Samuel, 23.85 million. I think that Brandon Aiyuk is probably going to want to end up somewhere near 25 million. Again, 30 million is unreasonable unless you add funny money that isn't actually practical onto it. Now, some guys care about that vanity money. Tyreek Hill cared about it. I don't know if Brandon Aiyuk does or not. We generally are able to tell once these contracts are executed. But, you know, Deebo and Brandon Aiyuk are such different styles of receivers, such different types of receivers. You have to think, though, because they are on the same team and Deebo's contract is 2 years older at this point, you have to think that the very floor for Brandon Aiyuk's contract would be the average per year of Deebo's contract. Where would the ceiling be? Well, probably around the number 3 contract in football, probably $26.7 million per year. And then you sort by fully guaranteed money. Tyreek Hill led the way at $52.5 million. You go down to about $40 million to round out the top 7, top 8. I think Brandon Aiyuk is probably going to demand at least $40 million in fully guaranteed money. The 49ers are known to lowball early in these projections. Because they lowball early in these projections and in these contract offers, it could often lead to a little bit of animosity over the course of the negotiating process. But that is negotiation 101. Neither side has a resolution at the beginning. These things can take some time to figure out. Anyway, this was all very, very broken down on my article. I've broken down the Brandon Aiyuk contract situation in a lot of detail. I want to move this to 49ers Q&A because you've already heard my recap from the entire day. We talked about John Lynch and his thoughts on the 49ers free agents. We talked about the 49ers injury report. I talked about Kyle Shanahan. I talked about and that's going to be tomorrow that he speaks. I actually had a chance to meet Andy Reid today and talk to him about his thoughts on Brock Purdy. Why don't we have a listen into Andy Reid on Brock Purdy, a little 30-second clip right now.
What stood out to you in preparing to play Brock Purdy and obviously in actually playing him in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, a lot of respect for Brock. He does a nice job. I don't really care where he got picked, right? That doesn't matter to me. He's just a good player. He sees the field. He's got good accuracy, great timing with his receivers, and he's calm. You feel like he's got everything kind of under control there.
Silicon Valley man says hi to me. David James Bond Lombardi burrito connoisseur. Unfortunately, I'm currently in Orlando, Florida, so the burrito selection is not great, but we'll be back in San Francisco soon. Being Butterfly points out that Justin Jefferson will reset the wide receiver market. I tend to agree with that. That might give a parameter for where the 49ers will pay Brandon Aiyuk. The thing about Aiyuk, though, is that his production has been prolific. He was even more efficient than Justin Jefferson this past season. When they measure yards per route run, the only more efficient receiver was Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying that Aiyuk is better than Justin Jefferson, but I'm saying this is way more complex than a lot of people seem to think. I think that I've heard a theory and I've heard just kind of a cliche or just talk going around that, oh, Brandon Aiyuk is a good receiver, but he's not great. He's not a game changer. And it's like, what are you talking about? He's one of the best separators in the game. He might be the best blocking wideout in the game. Those two things alone make him a game changer. Defenses have to account for a great separator and a great blocker. He is a very good X receiver who averaged, 17 or 18 yards per catch this last season. Brandon Aiyuk was number 7 in total receiving yardage, despite being number 20 in total targets. The efficiency does not lie with Brandon Aiyuk. And although Justin Jefferson, because of higher volume, will very likely be paid more, we can't discount what Aiyuk has done. And Aiyuk, since I'm fair and balanced, I talk about both sides here. Aiyuk can't discount the fact that he's under contract with the 49ers and that they have a track record of getting these deals done. And that ultimately there are two people between John Lynch and Brandon Aiyuk. If you're just looking at those two people as the ones that are representative of the negotiation and the talks here, there are two people in this room. Only one of them has decision-making power over where Brandon Aiyuk plays next year. Only John Lynch, only the team can decide that Brandon Aiyuk is not going to play for the 49ers next year. That's not a Brandon Aiyuk decision. He's under contract with the 49ers. Too often these days, people act like players have free agency when they're not free agents. And then they create a whole lot of drama. Now, players can try to push things in a certain direction, but ultimately the team can just take a deep breath. And if players cause chaos, if they cause drama on social media, if we hear all this and all that trade requests, like the one that we heard from Deebo Samuel, if all that happens, a team can start sweating it and they could be like, okay, fine, we'll take whatever return we can get from him. But the 49ers have already been through this type of fire once with Deebo Samuel, and they said, you know what? We have contractual control here. We'll just wait this out. And ultimately, the player wants to get paid. Ultimately, market forces will determine that this will resolve itself. And I think if the 49ers just patiently wait in the pocket here, it's not like this has even got bad. This is at the level of emojis on Instagram. Deebo Samuel literally requested a trade. This is at the level of emojis on Instagram. So it's the 49ers have been through this fire before, and I think they know exactly where they want this to end up. Now, if Brandon Aiyuk decides that he doesn't want to come anywhere near whatever the 49ers deem their workable offer to be, and the 49ers do get offered a king's ransom that can improve their team in return, then you can never say never. But we gauge events in the future by their likelihood, by their probability. And the probability of something like that happening in this Brandon Aiyuk case is not high. NFL drama. We have somebody saying that Aiyuk is worth $25 million. Now, it's not going to just be $25 million. It's going to be how much is fully guaranteed. There's so much more that goes into these contracts, right? Because NFL contracts, they're not like NBA contracts. They're not like baseball contracts. The guarantees are harder to come by, and the guarantees are really important in such a violent sport. Floyd the Barber asks, David, do you think the team cares if they upgrade the offensive line on the interior or offensive tackle so long as it's upgraded? I think you have to think about the big picture. Aaron Banks is only under contract for one more year at left guard. Trent Williams is going to be 36 next season. You can get better, I think, fairly quickly at both center and right guard and right tackle, the right side of the offensive line, even though those players are under contract besides right guard, which is John Feliciano. He's only under contract for this season, but center is under contract for 2 more years. Right tackle's under contract for 2 more years. So you've got to look at it in the big picture, because I think there is a potential talent drain at multiple positions along this offensive line. And even if that talent drain wasn't there, this unit still ranked in the 20s in pass blocking efficiency this past year. So that has to improve. Brock Purdy is going to be your massive investment in all likelihood. The pass protection in front of him needs to get better. Brock Purdy has been excellent creating when there isn't a whole lot in front of him. He's had great escapability, but I think for consistency offensively, you want to build as strong of an offensive line as possible. Somebody's saying that Lynch can't talk about Brandon Aiyuk without bringing up Brock Purdy. Well, I think, yeah, both guys. I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship between both of these players. And you can't talk about Brock Purdy without talking about the offensive line. You can't talk about the whole line without talking about Brock Purdy. It is a team sport. I tend to agree that Aiyuk will be in that top 5 range. He performed as such. When I show you all those graphs, Brandon Aiyuk is an outlier in the positive regard for the 49ers. We are only 86 subscribers away from 70,000. You guys realize how big of a deal that is? 70,000 subscribers. So if you're watching right now and you haven't subscribed yet, you could be the 70,000th. I think that's how you say it. You hit the button right now, because there's not a zero chance that 86 other people or 85 other people will hit that subscribe button too. Especially if several hundred of you watching this at once. Everybody hit that subscribe button. Let's get up there to 70,000. Do I think the 49ers will be better on defense than last year? I think that it's not going to be all that hard to be better on defense. They were the number 12 defense by EPA per play this past season. They really regressed. They went from number 1 and had similar personnel. Some would argue better personnel, but they dropped down to number 12. So I'd certainly hope that they'll be better. I mean, there was a slide. They fired Steve Wilkes. They've revamped the defensive line. They're going to be looking to take this back to the level of 2022, or at least reapproach it. There's Andy Reid, and there's the 49ers depth chart. Turquoise, new signee for the 49ers. You know, why don't we listen here? Let's listen to D'Amico Ryans talk about the 49ers power structure today. This is interesting. This is D'Amico Ryans, coach of the Texans, talking about how the 49ers have influenced what he is doing in Houston.
Things from Kyle, just seeing how he operates and how him and John work together. I think that's one thing that I've always leaned on. Me working with Nick, and just how I see things being, how to have a successful organization. Just the head coach and GM working in step. I saw that from Kyle and John. Seeing how they work together. I think that's credited why the 49ers have been, so successful over the past few years, just because of their working relationship.
So you see that organizational structure from the 49ers, you do see it carried over to a lot of how you try to operate now.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's all about collaboration. When everybody's working together, you can get things accomplished. So I think they really set the path for that collaboration piece. And those guys have had an outstanding season. Past couple years, being able to go to conference championship games, Super Bowls, you see the success that they've had because they work together well. They add the right players, right guys with the right character, and of course, Kyle is an outstanding coach, one of the best offensive coaches in the NFL. So when you add all those things together, you get a successful team.
So, what's really interesting to me is you walk around these owners' meetings to the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando. And I'm sure in the Bill Walsh era, you would run around a lot of, the hotel, and you'd run around a lot of assistant coaches that turned into head coaches around the league, and you'd see the 49ers tree in that way. But at the owners' meetings, you also run into a ton of GMs who used to be in the 49ers scouting department. The influence of this 49ers team on the rest of the league is immense. We ran into Kwefi Adolfo Mensah, who is the GM of the Minnesota Vikings today. So, I mean, at the executive level between him, Adam Peters, obviously Martin Mayhew, also still with Washington right now. You go throughout the entire league, you see on both the coaching side and on the executive side, the 49ers have their influence. And I think that's a testament to how the organizational structure has worked in cooperation between John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And you heard D'Amico Ryans talking about that. The video with John Lynch talking is up on the page, so be sure to check that out. And obviously, Lynch talked today, and we can hear his rationale and his explanation of the Eric Armstead situation in a short prepared by Mike.
Fortunate to draft and acquire and a lot of really talented players, and we've rewarded a lot of them. And so, some realities come to bear that you can't keep everybody, that you can't, and so you have to make some tough judgments. And we worked with Eric, and really appreciative of he and his family, and representative of trying to work something out, and a restructured contract. Took a couple different whacks at different ideas, and ultimately he wanted to go see what his value, and good for him because it was robust. I mean, you saw what he got in Jacksonville, and so he bet on himself, and good for Eric. But we just made a decision, and part of it was that he had missed some games. That happens, but at his number we had to adjust it, and we made that trade for Malik, and so we wish Eric nothing but the best. Those are tough decisions.
John Lynch on Eric Armstead, and that is a featured part of my article. 10 things that we learned from the 49ers at the owners' meetings from John Lynch today. We're going to learn a whole lot more from Kyle Shanahan tomorrow, from Jed York, who's about to officially become the new principal owner of the 49ers after he bought out enough of the stake of the team from his mom, Denise DeBartolo York. So York is going to speak tomorrow here in Orlando, and so is Kyle Shanahan early in the morning. So set your alarm clocks. I'll have all the updates for you. I'll have the video for you as well. Thanks for joining me on 49ers Intel tonight. That was today. We get into a whole lot of detail in this article, so be sure to see it, and I will talk to you all very soon. Thanks again.